Hello everyone and welcome into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name as always is Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for tuning in on this very cold Tuesday afternoon here in the tri-state area, but hopefully this show will brighten your day as we talk all of the sports that you know and love. Starting off by recapping a divisional round game, the best perhaps of the weekend. Bills, Ravens. They'll be getting into the surprising news of Ben Johnson finalizing a deal to become the Chicago Bears' new head coach. Then I'll be doing an interesting thing. I'm going to be looking at the Vikings' options should Sam Darnold leave, and to J.J. McCarthy. It's a very interesting debate here. Not a lot of people are thinking about it, but I wanted to present an interesting case study just because. And then I'm looking at, in men's college basketball, the player of the year race and the freshman of the year race. Is Flag gaining ground on Johnny Broome due to Broome's injury? Or can Broome come back and prove why he is the best player in men's college basketball? And then concluding with a preview of a nice weekend matchup in the Premier League between two top six sides, Man City and Chelsea. Can they both find their footing in this one? Before we get into any of that exciting stuff, I do want to remind you, as always, to like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the network if you want to keep up to date with all our new content, not just for my show, but all the shows around the network. But if you want to contribute and interact with the shows a little bit more directly, consider making yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. As always, great way to share your input, share your opinions about certain things throughout the show as they come up. It just makes it that much better, and it is genuinely appreciated by all, not just me, but around the network in advance. Without further ado, let us jump right into our first divisional round recap here, starting off with the exciting Sunday night match between the Bills and the Ravens that ended with a Buffalo victory 27-25. And a lot of people will throw around the word blame for this game, but make no ands, ifs, or buts about it. These are two exceptional teams with little to separate them, and one of them just had to make a couple more mistakes than the other, and it just turned out it was Baltimore. Not to say that this indicts the Baltimore Ravens, not to say that they'll never break through in the postseason with Lamar Jackson. It's just that this game could have gone any way, and it just so happened that the Baltimore Ravens, in the critical moments in the game, did not take advantage of Buffalo's mishaps. And Buffalo, for the most part, played disciplined football. They played a conservative game that allowed them to make key decisions that ultimately were the difference in this matchup, whereas the Baltimore Ravens played a little bit too erratically in certain moments of the game and lost that little bit of control that the Bills ultimately had. And so that's what separated these two teams. I'm going to talk about the turnovers that define this game. But let's not think that Baltimore could not have won this game either outside of the turnovers, because they had their destiny in front of them, and it was just that Mark Andrews drop that separated them from potentially taking this one into overtime. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and say Mark Andrews is to blame. Lamar Jackson is to blame, because no one really was to blame in a game where it was just two spectacular teams going up against each other, and one of them had to lose. But let's talk about the big stars of this game, the key aspects and calls that occurred during this game, because it really was an interesting one. Let's start off with Josh Allen's performance. Only 127 passing yards in this one, 16 of 22, but the 2 rush yards showed how he has matured throughout his NFL career, especially during this season. Because last season, some of the decisions he made in this game would most likely have been turnovers. For example, late in the game, when they were driving on what ultimately became their game-sealing field goal drive, Josh Allen decides to keep it, and then at the last second it looks like he might pitch it back to James Cook. And if he had done so, they'd even scoop it up, potentially win a touchdown going the other way. But no, he decides to keep the football, preserve the choice for Sean McDermott of going for on 4th down or kicking the field goal. Ultimately, not leaving it up to chance. That shows the signs of a mature quarterback no matter what the passing stats look like. Because in this game, it wasn't about Josh Allen as being a superhero. Even though a lot of people were saying, hey, two of these guys, one of them is going to win the MVP. Let's see who's better in this game. And if you actually look at the stats, Lamar, even though he had more mistakes, did quote-unquote play better statistically than Josh Allen. But Josh Allen proved that he was more valuable in what he didn't do in this game than what he did end up doing. Because what he didn't do was turn the ball over. And what he did do was control the game for his team and made critical choices that ultimately decided the game in Buffalo's favor. But then on the Lamar Jackson side of things, let's not forget that even with the turnovers, he played a pretty perfect second half. And he was the main reason as to why they were a Mark Andrews dropped 2-point conversion away from extending this game and sending it to overtime, potentially winning there. 18 of 25, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. So you can't necessarily pin it all on Lamar because what he did was keep his team in this game, even though, for the most part, the turnovers were what decided it. But my bigger question is this. You have these two situations where you're going for 2, if you're the Ravens. And throughout the game, Isaiah Likely has, for the most part, been the better tight end. So, late in the third quarter when you're going for your first 2-point conversion, it's a deflected pass by Matt Milano, who, by the way, was also the difference for Buffalo, if you want to look at it that way, in terms of someone on Buffalo's defense stepping up. But I do believe the targeted man was Mark Andrews. Then in the second 2-point conversion, to tie everything up to potentially send this game to overtime, you get the perfect play call to Mark Andrews, but he drops it. And remember before, he was the one who fumbled when they were driving that ultimately cost them potentially good drive in which they could have scored a field goal or a touchdown and really helped themselves. But I do think that you can't necessarily blame Mark Andrews in that situation just because he dropped it, because it was the perfect play call. In fact, I think that both of those 2-point conversions were perfect play calls, in my opinion. They were just executed poorly. And so my question is, for my receiving MVP for the Ravens, Isaiah Likely, why not scheme up something for him? He seemed to have more of an impact in this one. He seemed to trouble the Bills' defense a little bit more. He seemed to exploiting the zone coverage that the Bills employed a little bit better. So why not draw something up for him? I know that Mark Andrews is a Pro Bowl tight end, but it was just not his day. He had the fumble, and clearly he did not look like himself for very large portions of this game. Not until, say, the late third to late fourth quarter did he really show up. And so that's my ultimate question. If the Ravens trusted Isaiah Likely a little bit more, does this game turn out differently? But then again, the 3 turnovers are what people are going to pinpoint in this one. Because you can't turn the football over in postseason matchups. And that's what the Ravens ultimately did. It doesn't matter who's getting the targets. It doesn't matter how Lamar plays in just the second half. It matters their overall play throughout 4 quarters. And Lamar made some critical moments throughout the game that at the time didn't seem like they would come back to bite the Ravens, but ultimately was the difference. As for the Bills, it wasn't necessarily pretty. They were outgained in this matchup, which ironically was the main theme for all the winners in perhaps the first time ever where all 4 winners of the Divisional Round were outgained by their opponents. But the thing is, sometimes ball control wins games, and it may piss a lot of people off, but ultimately It's what Buffalo needed to do in that situation. They were right in saying that people doubted them because they were slower, because they were smaller, because they were faster, because in most areas, Baltimore had them beat. They have better offensive weapons. Their defense have been playing like one of the best in the NFL ever since the playoffs started. And to top it all off, Lamar Jackson was playing MVP caliber football. And so, looking at the game plan for Buffalo, chances were that they weren't going to be explosive at any given point throughout the game. But timeliness does matter in today's NFL. And if you can accomplish it consistently, you're going to be a very good football team and a tough one to stop at that. That's what Buffalo is. They're a ball control offense now, where Josh Allen doesn't have to do too much, doesn't have to wear different hats. He controls the tempo of this offense, the rhythm of this offense, and thus nothing happens that negatively impacts the way they play. I don't necessarily know if it's going to work against the Chiefs. We'll see, because the Chiefs are a different animal in the postseason, especially the championship game. But the Bills now have a strategy where potentially they can control the football a little bit better than, say, Patrick Mahomes right now. As for the Ravens, it's going to be another long offseason where Lamar Jackson is yet again without a Lombardi trophy, and questions are going to be asked. If he wins his third MVP, when will he win his Super Bowl? Because all other two-time or more MVP winners have won Super Bowls. It's only Lamar who has not. And so that's going to be the ultimate question until he achieves postseason success. But for now, we're left wondering what could have been for Baltimore, and we're thinking of ways this Buffalo Bills team can be a little bit different in terms of the outcome of their championship matchup in Kansas City. But let me know what you think about this game in the comments below. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about some more surprising NFL news. Ben Johnson finalizing a deal to become the Chicago Bears' new head coach. We'll have more information and updates about that after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?